But yeah, yeah. But no, I mean like. Okay,
Okay.
here we
Here
are.
we are. Here we are.
So now you're visible and audible.
Okay.
Go ahead and say hello to the folks and get started.
Okay. Hi, everybody out there. Welcome to Bird and Beckett Books. I want to give a great shout out to Bird and Beckett Books. It's one of my favorite places in the city. Eric is the best. Come buy books here. They're open for business. I want to say that my son, who's now 20 years old, grew up in Bird and Beckett Books, and he's even like getting his college books because he's like going to college from home, like everybody else. So, yeah. So come out here. So I'm here. My name is Tehmina Khan. I teach at City College of San Francisco. I've been a part of City College of San Francisco for a long time as a staff tutor. I take some classes now and then, which is super fun. And I'm here with my colleague, friend, sister, comrade, Mary Bravewoman, who is a math professor at City, who started off as a student and is now our AFT 2121. That is our faculty union, American Federation of Teachers, Local 2121. Mary is our vice president. And we're going to be talking to you about the crisis at City College. And we're also going to be just talking about our City College journeys, why it's important, and also about like math and English.
Yeah.
Right.
Some words and
Yeah.
numbers.
Yeah. Words and numbers.
Yeah.
Words and numbers. Yeah. So Mary's gonna give us a land acknowledgement.
Yeah, I just want to take a moment and recognize we are living in a beautiful city in a beautiful territory. This is not my ancestral home, but this is the ancestral home of the Ramaytush Ohlone people, and all of us. Even though my roots are very deep, California Native and Southeastern Native American, and all of us are living on unceded lands in California, in San Francisco, in the Bay Area, in the United States, right, in North America. And just want to take a moment to appreciate the ancestors and the peoples and the cultures that were here and thriving and learning and living and loving long before we touched this place.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah, and we give gratitude to the Ramaytush Ohlone people.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we're here because City College is in a deep crisis. City College has been in crisis before, but right now we are in a situation where we're looking at losing the college as we know it. Is that right?
That's true.
Yeah.
We are facing a budget deficit of depending on whose numbers you believe, roughly $33 million. It's a structural deficit, and it's been a growing problem. I think at the root of it, it's the chronic underfunding of the community college system, and the new student funding formula has hurt us in unexpected ways. What's different this time than other crises is that there were 163 pink slips issued to full-time faculty. Cuts have been made continually through the years to part-time faculty, and but full-time faculty have been pretty safe so far. And what's so daunting about that is that in order to legally lay off or fire full-time faculty, they first have to eliminate the part-time faculty in those departments. So if we take all the numbers in the 41 targeted departments, there are an additional 447 approximately part-time faculty that would be impacted and lose their jobs, which means that 610 faculty members at City College, or nearly 65% of our faculty body, would lose their jobs this coming fall.
Yeah. I mean, that's massive. And that means, and that means a reduction of like something like 31,000 students, perhaps. Something like that.
Close to. It's nearly, if you think about now not all of these are instructional faculty, right? We have librarians and counselors, but yes, if you simply take an average of the number of classes taught per faculty, the number of students per class, yes, we're looking at over 30,000 students who would be impacted. Yeah. Not necessarily full-time students, but someone who is taking a class to, improve their writing skills so that they get a job, or improving their English skills, right?
Right.
All kinds of reasons why students be taking classes.
Yeah, or someone who might be just getting their feet wet by taking one class.
Yeah.
And then, and see where it leads them. It might lead them to a degree program. So we have, the possibility of 31,000 students being shut out of an entryway into education, into higher education.
Absolutely, yes.
And that's just devastating.
Yes.
That's just, and if we think about what City College has been, so like at its peak, City College had something like 100,000 students.
Yes, over 90,000 students. Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And now right now we're down to something like 30,000, or is it?
It would be nice if we were at 30,000. No,
Okay.
it's less than
All right.
that. Yes.
Okay, it's less than 30,000. Yeah.
Unfortunately.
So, and less than 30,000 FTE.
FTES,
FTES.
Full-time equivalent
Got it.
students.
Right.
So there are more than 30,000 students, right?
Yeah.
There are more than 30,000, 40,000 students taking classes. Like we talked about individuals, but those taking, it could take 5 people to create one full-time equivalent student.
Right. Yes.
So we're not talking about individual human beings. We're talking about
full-time equivalent. Students.
Somebody who would be enrolled or related to the number of units, 12 units that would create a full-time student.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
So
Yeah.
It's college bureaucracy speak.
Yes.
Yeah. Right. So that's
right. Yeah, and so it has legal ramifications.
Yes. And
right.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And So we have these massive layoffs. We have these massive cuts that would shut out several thousand.
Yes.
Tens of thousands of students.
And unfortunately in departments, some of the departments that are taking the largest hits to the point where they may actually be eliminated, programs eliminated, things like the aircraft maintenance technology, which an entry-level job after completing that program would be $80,000 a year, right? There's a demand, and we graduate a full cohort nearly every year, but right now the one full-timer in that department has received a pink slip, which means that all part-timers would go away, which means 100% of the program would not be taught.
Right, and this is a popular program. It has wait lists. And because the rhetoric that they've been giving us until now has been like, we have classes are not full. We're going to cut the classes out that don't fill. Right. But this is clearly not the case.
No, And if you look at economics, right? So this is also there's a lot of legal back and forth, right, that we have to deal with, and so
Yeah.
the seniority list, right?
Right.
So
Right.
there were several history and economics are under the same umbrella department.
Right.
Okay. So there were several pink slips given in those departments, but by seniority, it impacts econ greater than it does history.
Yeah.
So we are essentially practically eliminating the economics department,
Okay.
right?
Right.
Because history teachers and economics teachers are not interchangeable
Right.
parts,
Yeah.
right? They
Yeah.
don't. They have different skill sets. They were hired to do different jobs, even though they're under the same umbrella department.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And those econ programs fill, right?
Yeah.
They are they're transfer level courses, and students go on to Berkeley, they go on to CSUs, they go on to private universities,
Yeah.
and are in demand, right? It's not like these classes are not filling.
Right. Right. Right.
They're not eliminating underwater basket weaving.
Right. Right.
Not that we offer
Yeah.
underwater basket
Right.
weaving.
Right. Right.
Right.
But yeah, they're not eliminating classes that are not filling.
Right.
Right. They're eliminating classes that are popular, that are, and that are necessary as well.
Yeah.
So.
And
yeah.
at this point, they've been cutting. They've been saying that they're cutting classes that like you said aren't filling, right? And then they say, well, we have to offer fewer classes because we have fewer students, and then we offer less and fewer come, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then they say, well, fewer came, so we have to offer less, and right.
Right.
And so then it becomes this self-fulfilling prophecy,
Right. Yeah.
That
Yeah.
each year, and we have had enrollment decline, but I think City College is going to be extremely important in the recovery for San Francisco, the economic recovery of San Francisco, as we move our way out of this pandemic, right? And people need to get job training so that they can get back to work. Literally, the folks who train the people, EDD sends folks
Yes.
to City College, right?
Yeah.
For training.
Yeah.
And the people who train them at City College have received pink slips. So we're going to have a whole bunch more unemployed people,
Right.
who are going to need training,
Yeah.
and there's no trainers left to train them.
Yeah.
Right.
Wow.
So
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah.
The implications are just really
Yeah. Yeah.
scary and devastating.
Right. Right. And especially now. Yeah. Yeah. And so, I mean, there's been a lot of talk about pressure from the state to turn City College, community colleges like City, which offer a lot of things to a lot of people, into really like narrowly focused junior colleges. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's true. I mean, our chancellor said as much,
Yes.
right? That what was it, 180? He believes
Right.
that the state chancellor
Yeah.
believes that City College should be a college that employs 180 full-time faculty.
Right.
Which, our union membership is currently close to 1,000.
Over
right?
1,000,
Over
I think.
1,000. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and how could
Right.
And San Francisco needs so much more than that.
Right. Right.
And I think this is part of this is we were talking about this the other night, that right, that connection between higher education and that power dynamic, and
Right.
right where's the learning for learning's sake? It's like it
Yes.
has to be some focus, right?
There has to be an end goal.
An end goal, exactly.
Right?
Yes.
And so there's a lot more pressure for that these days, right? For students to declare a major early, stick to that major. We have like the guided pathways plan
Right.
that's trying to get students through quickly,
Right.
which is great for some students. It's great for probably for many students, but certainly like my academic path didn't take me that way. I mean, it took
certainly
a
mine did.
while.
Yes.
I mean, so and that's something actually we can talk about that. How did you come to City College? And what is City College like? You know, what was your path? What was your educational path? Maybe, yeah.
Yeah. So I landed in San Francisco. Well, next month it'll be 31 years.
Wow.
31 years ago, yeah, with my little toddler in tow, and I was 10 years after high school and didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't feel like I had any skills to get a job. Anything I saw in the want ads didn't. Wasn't going to be enough that I was qualified for, was not going to be enough to support me and my daughter. So I opened up that catalog, that schedule of classes that showed up, and found my way to City College. So so I enrolled in classes that fall. I didn't know what I was doing. I worked with a fabulous counselor. She's retired now, but Joan Vitarello got me on my path. And I remember sitting down and trying to put together an ed plan in my second semester. And she said, have you thought about transfer to four-year school? I want you to follow the IGETC. And I was just like, this is way too much for me. And she said, we need to get you into a math class. And I was like, I can't do math, and I don't, and I don't want to transfer to a four-year school. I was thinking in the back of my mind, I don't have the money. I couldn't tell her that, right? I couldn't afford it as a single parent, and I will admit, and I do tell my students this, that when I graduated high school, I had a fifth grade math ability. And I was told by my high school counselor that I wasn't college material. Like that, she actually asked me if I was in a relationship, was I considering getting married, because college really wasn't for me.
Wow. Wow.
And, I found my way to City College. I started taking classes. I started working on the certificate for the early childhood education program. Because I was raising a toddler,
right.
and I figured that's something I could do. And and then that next fall, Joan talked me into applying to the Math Bridge program, which is where I met your husband, Charles.
Right.
And it was there that there was another fabulous counselor, Joseph Padua, who really encouraged us. He was a little bit of a drill sergeant, but he also with a lot of love. And but it was there that I started to face my fears around math. I also discovered I have a learning disability that impacts the way I learn. So math was an extra struggle for me. But I learned also that it was okay to make mistakes and learn from them. And that's where I started building community. Because when I moved to the city with my daughter, I had no family here, had no friends here, and it was just the two. It was just the two of us.
Right.
And in the beginning, a lot of times, if her preschool wasn't in session, I would have to bring her to school with me. Yeah. Some teachers frowned on it, but most allowed me, as long as she was well behaved, allowed me to still attend class. And so. And 4 years, I had to work my way up, and by the time I finished 3 semesters of math to get to the graduate level, or the graduation level, I realized I really loved it, and that I started thinking about it. I had to tell myself in that first semester that it was like a language, and that's how I started thinking about. That's how I got through. I said, if I can learn the structure, if I can understand the rules, right, and learn the vocabulary, then I can learn to speak this language. And that's how I teach math today. I teach it as a language.
Wow.
Yeah. So, so 31 years later, 4 years as a student, 12 years as a classified tutor,
Yeah.
And now 15 years as a full-time faculty member. And City College is a center of my adult existence.
Yeah.
It really is,
Yeah.
because everything started right over there,
Right.
just
Yeah.
over
Yeah.
just over the hill, right behind us,
Yeah.
and it all grew out from there. My friendships, my relationships, my career, even my name.
Yeah.
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 So.
Yeah. That's fantastic. And your daughter's childhood.
And my daughter's childhood,
Yeah.
she grew up. She went to City College for a year.
Yeah.
And then she transferred to USF, and she, her journey. My journey took 16 years to finish college, and she was able to finish in 4 years, and started working for the state.
Yeah.
She was when she was appointed legislative director for the state senator. She was the youngest female legislative director in the state of California.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is fantastic. And that's that's coming out of City College.
Yeah, it's
And,
all
yeah.
it's all city it's all
Yeah.
City College, because I'm the daughter of high school dropouts. My mom had
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
Instead of graduating, she had me.
Yeah.
My grandfather was a migrant worker
Yeah.
and worked in the
Yeah.
fields. And my dad, as a young boy with his father, worked in the fields and traveled through the migrant camps
Wow.
for a time.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
education was not higher education was not part of our reality.
Right.
It always seemed like it was
Yeah.
something that was way out of
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
realm of possibility.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about you? Your path
Yeah.
to City College?
So my first of all, my family background is different in that, like, higher education was very much about a part of my entire upbringing. It was like, you will grow up, you will be a scientist, you will go to college, you will you will be a doctor. Actually, is kind of what they were saying, but
yeah.
they're scientists, and so certainly math and science was a big part of my upbringing. My mom, when I was in second grade, I was in my teacher put me in the middle math group, and my mom went to the school and said, "Oh no, she needs to be in the top math group. You can't." So this is my mom. My
Wow,
mom
yeah.
does math.
Yeah.
And then when I was in fourth grade, and my teacher said, "Your daughter's not doing her homework." She's like, "What?" And so she would sit me down, make me do my homework before I went out to play, watch TV, or anything, and then for good measure, she'd make me balance her checkbook.
Oh wow! Wow.
So this is math in my family, in my life, and so I had the confidence to do math, and the idea, like this Western idea that women don't do math, we don't have that.
Oh,
we're like,
okay,
oh yeah,
yeah.
women do math.
Yeah,
okay,
no.
Women don't do theater, but they do math. So I came up against different walls, right?
Right.
So I mean, I did do theater. I that was like my first love as an artist was theater, and then my second love was film. But poetry was kind of always there. It's always like it's the basis of both of those, and so that's kind of how I come at literature and poetry. But my passion, my school, I grew up in Santa Clara, and Santa Clara in 1980. Something is not what it is today,
No,
right?
no.
It was not yet. I mean, it was not yet Silicon Valley. Sunnyvale, Cupertino, yeah. Santa Clara, not quite.
Not quite.
Yeah. So it was very much a working class, middle class school, and I was tracked in the college track, because of my parents. They wouldn't have it any other way, right? So. But it was very segregated in that way.
Yeah.
And it was easy to get A's because I had that background from my family.
Sure.
And that pressure as well. But like the humanities was more challenging because I'm coming from a math and science family. And then the other ways that humanities is challenging is because humanities, you are engaging with yourself and your history and your culture. And when you don't see that in the curriculum or in the literature, you're coming up against like kind of a criticism of yourself.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely. I never
Yeah.
saw. I
Yeah.
never saw myself
Right.
in the things that I was learning about.
Yeah.
Right.
And neither did I. I still liked it. And it was actually I come at literature from Spanish. And Spanish is not one of my heritage languages. I took Spanish in high school, and something about the poetry of Lorca and Machado and Neruda just really like hit me.
I don't know
Right.
why this is making me so emotional, but it really is. I think because
Yeah.
Spanish is one of my heritage languages, and it was robbed from me. So, yeah.
Yeah.
But yes.
Yeah.
But that's beautiful.
Yeah. And so for some reason, there was something about speaking Spanish, learning Spanish, that sort of like connected me to a part of myself. So you know, I grew up in an somewhat Urdu-speaking household, but we spoke a lot of English. My parents spoke English. They were English educated, and they spoke English in the home. In part because my older sister has autism, and her educational system was saying, you know, you might not want to speak multiple languages. I mean, at the time, they were really hoping that my sister would learn to speak, and she never did learn to speak verbally. She uses signs, but at the time, I think that was part of the pressure, and also I think for immigrants at that time, there was a lot of pressure to speak only English.
Absolutely. I mean, it's when
Yeah.
my mother was coming up, they
Yeah.
were not allowed to speak anything other
Yeah.
than English in the schools, and my grandfather absolutely refused
Yeah.
to have his kids learn Spanish.
Yeah. Wow. And I think that's like that's part of my husband's heritage as well, where he's back there in the bookstore.
Yeah.
Where his grandparents, his Filipino Salvadoran
Right.
grandparents did not speak English only spoke English with their children.
Right.
Yeah. They actually spoke Spanish with each other.
Yep.
So
Similar. Yep.
Yeah. So I felt I guess I felt kind of cut off from Urdu, and yet found something of that in Spanish.
Interesting.
And then later found something of it in Arabic. I studied Arabic in college. So I went to UC Berkeley. I got straight A's in high school. I went to UC Berkeley, and that was where I wanted to be. It was 1985, during the height of the anti-apartheid movement.
Right.
And so this is it. This is where I want to be. And it was really, I mean, so much of what I got from that experience was outside the classroom. Was
Sure.
like, student activism. And then I spent my junior year abroad at American University in Cairo. Came back and participated in a lot of student struggle around Palestine, Central America, and connecting all of that. And I think like towards the end of my Berkeley experience, I kind of found I did a major called the Humanities Field Major, which they don't allow you to do anymore because it's too interdisciplinary and it's too wishy-washy. I don't know, but for me it was great because I had some Arabic literature classes, I had some post-colonial classes through the English department, I had some history, some intellectual history, kind of like some quirky things that I was able to pull together and write an undergraduate thesis and sort of justify my existence.
Wow.
And so it was really so that was really fun. And at the end of that, I took a great film class with the late and great Albert Johnson, film professor at UC Berkeley.
Okay.
And he turned me on to third world cinema. And I came out of that and I was like, I am going to be a filmmaker.
Nice.
And so I applied to State. I thought I was like hot stuff, and I applied to NYU and got turned down, and I applied to State and I got in. So I was like, okay, I guess I'm going to do this. And it wasn't quite as I had planned. And part of it is that I didn't have like a strong visual foundation. Part of that is I was hitting against just whiteness, cultural whiteness when it came, and aesthetic whiteness, and other things. And actually, when I look back on that, I kind of wish I had come to City College then. I would have. I mean, why did I have to go to grad school? I could have learned the basics of filmmaking in a community like City College, and then figured out, hey, this isn't the right art for me.
Right.
Right. And it would have, would have saved me some grief. and a lot of time and money, and and my parents worrying about me, like, what's this kid of mine doing studying film for 6 years?
Oh gosh, yes.
She should have her PhD in chemistry by now. So or something, or PhD in something. And so that was like my first. So you're talking about learning from failure, right? Learning from mistakes, right? I don't think I learned how to do that until grad school. Until I basically, failed at grad school and had to figure things out.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so, but my first experience at City College was I was looking for a job while I was floundering through grad school, and there was a job open for a citizenship tutor at Chinatown campus.
Okay.
So I came to City College. This was 1995. Back then, and I started working at Chinatown campus. This was during the Clinton administration, when welfare reform had gone through. And what that meant for immigrant seniors was that they had to pass to get their citizenship in order to keep their SSI benefits.
Oh, right.
Right. And so we had lots of elderly immigrant students coming to Chinatown campus, with anxiety about needing to pass their citizenship test.
Sure.
And I feel like coming to City College for them, for many of them, then allowed them in. It created a place of community. And the fact that City College was there, I think allowed this to be a more empowering and less traumatic experience than it might have been for other immigrants in other parts of the country who didn't have this.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And so I would run students through the citizenship test. What's your name? What's your address? Who was the first president? Blah, blah, blah. And get to know them a little bit, which was just really a beautiful experience.
Right.
I just learned. I felt when I was doing that, when I was working closely with the Chinese community, I felt for a lot of my young adulthood, I felt like I couldn't live in this country, like I didn't belong in this country. But when I was in the Chinese community, I was like, okay, I can be here. Yeah. These are my people.
Right.
They're not my, my heritage, but these are my people.
Sure.
And that was really, that was a pivotal moment for me. I didn't stay at City College that long during that time period. I actually ended up from that experience, I ended up working in nonprofits doing the same sort of thing, but in community-based organizations, and vocational English as a second language. And then some years later, I worked for an Iraqi refugee organization, at the beginnings of the Iraq War. And so that experience of working in that on that level, education on that level, community-based education from City College, gave me the skills to do this in other places,
right.
other nonprofit organizations. And then I was doing that for a while, and then the funding from one of the organizations, they lost their funding. The Iraqi Community Association lost their funding, and and I had a baby at the time. I had Omar, who's now 20, and and so then I worked for his preschool for a little while and stuff like that. And then my husband Charles, who had been working at City College this whole time, 1991 until now, I think first in disabled students program and then in the math lab. So I was peripherally kind of hanging out at City College. And this is back before we had cell phones. I would call if I wanted to talk to him, and I'd talk to somebody else, and they'd get me to him. Anyway.
Sure.
So, but then he said, I'm sick of paying for your benefits. 3 people on our benefits is a lot of money, and I think you should get a job at City College because if you do, you will have benefits. And I was like, yeah. That's true. And he actually said, okay, well, here's a job announcement for an English tutor. You should apply. And so I did.
Yeah.
And so that was my start and the beginning of my long stretch at City College. I was tutoring. First it was English 91. It was Basic Skills English. And we talked a little bit about basic skills, or we will talk a little bit about basic skills. Taking the time, see how our conversation's going.
Right.
But so I started off tutoring basic skills English through through the English department, and then later switched to a program, a federally funded program called the Writing Success Project. And we worked with classes on all levels of English, from the basic skills to the transfer level classes. And that was essentially where I stayed for quite a while. I worked with a lot of faculty members. That was like the best training ground for being a teacher. I sat in and worked closely with their students when I was like getting ready to apply as faculty, I counted out that I had worked with 25 different English instructors.
Wow,
and saw how they taught and what they taught and did the readings that the students did and got to know the students. So that was that was really powerful experience.
Yeah.
And so while I was doing that, I was also going to grad school. At that point, I had been turned down for a job that I really wanted, and I was like, okay, now I got to go back to grad school. That's what I got to do.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
and I started out with this is crazy, but I started out with a medieval Spanish literature class. Why I chose that, I'm not entirely sure, but I knew I wanted to work on my Spanish reading skills. So the job I had turned down for was a job teaching teaching literary translation. I've been writing poetry this entire time. So, but this was a job teaching literary translation to elementary school kids, right? Which I ended up doing later. But anyway, that's a whole other story. But I decided I need to work on my Spanish literature. My Spanish reading is not good enough. So the class I take is medieval Spanish literature, which is very, very hard.
I can only imagine. Medieval literature in any language. Right. Let alone Spanish.
Right. But as you said, you're talking about math as a language, right? And so here I am, learning a new language, essentially, medieval Spanish, and you have to, just like with math, you have to run with it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And you have to just allow yourself to not know for a while until you start getting into the text and being in the text. And this actually really helped me when I teach a new text in my English classes. I talk about this experience. I said, well, just kind of, it takes time. You want to be patient with yourself when you're getting into the author's voice.
Right.
And it's okay. You don't have to look up every single word. In fact, you don't have to look up most words. You're just getting into the author's voice. You can go back. Right, mark things that you don't understand, and you can go back.
Right,
and so that's what I did, and I read, El Cid, and I read Libro del Buen Amor, and all, Lazarillo de Tormes, like medieval Iberian Spanish, which anyway. Wow. So anyway, I enjoyed it. I did all right. I did pretty well actually, and I made friends. And I made friends with like a lot of grad students in the Spanish department. And I thought, well, I don't want to do a master's in Spanish. What do I want to do? And I was, again, I was writing poetry, and I knew from my experience as a film student that I didn't want to be in an arts program. I did not want to do a master's of fine arts in creative writing.
Sure.
So I thought, well, I can do comparative literature, which was kind of where I was headed as an undergraduate. I liked the comparative literature department, but they made you take Greek or Latin, and that wasn't me. So they changed. It's not like that anymore. Anyway.
Yeah.
But so I decided to just I took the first core class in comparative literature at State, and then I thought, okay, well, I can do this. And then I applied to the program and got in, and then did my coursework. And then I floundered again when it came to writing a thesis. I started one project, it didn't quite pan out. I started another project, and then I ended up, I was teaching with that same organization that earlier had turned me down. I started teaching literary translation in elementary schools, and by then my son was in elementary school, so we had this beautiful poetry and translation program in the elementary school, and that became my life for a few years.
Yeah.
And it was like a grad school. I'd done my coursework. I wasn't writing a thesis, and I was I just put that aside, and I was doing the poetry in the elementary school, and I was working at City, and raising my kid, and all of that. So that was kind of my life for a while. but then sometime later, I also experienced a health crisis. But sometime later, my advisor contacted me and said, "Hey, what's going on with your thesis?" And I was kind of hiding from her. I was like, "I don't know."
I remember
You
those
know?
feelings.
And she's like, "Well, you should take the comprehensive exam. Why don't you just do that?" I was like, "Oh, okay." And I'm really glad I did, because the comprehensive exam has us choosing 30 texts from, we have this like algorithm of sorts in which they have to come from, you have to have a certain number of texts from each geographical region, time period, genre, all of that. And you could probably look at it and figure out the math formula, but
Or I could write one.
Yeah. or create one, right?
Yeah.
Or you're like, oh, this looks like this, right? So I ended up, taking, reading this like fantastic array of texts and, taking notes on them and talking to myself about them for, I think that took me like maybe a couple semesters to do that. And then I took an exam. They asked me, I wrote a paper. I wrote like a focused paper, dealing with essentially Arab Spain.
Okay.
To make a long story short, and looking at like a number of texts, including Don Quixote, including the work of Federico Garcia Lorca and the poetry of Mahmoud Darwish, looking back on Arab Spain. So anyway, that was my area of focus, and then I had conversations with my committee about a whole array of texts, from the Epic of Gilgamesh to to Neruda, to Gabriela Mistral, or so like an incredible array of texts. And then once I finished that, I went to chair of the English department, Erin Denny, and said, "Hey, I just finished my master's." She said, "Fantastic! Give me your give me your CV, and I'll consider you for emergency hire."
Wow. Yeah.
Which is how I got in. I got in as an emergency hire.
Yeah.
Emergency hire part-timer, and then I went through the formal process to be in the part-time pool.
Sure.
And that's where I am.
Okay,
I have applied full-time and not gotten it, but that happens to a lot of people.
Yeah.
And we'll see where that takes me. But I really, so my journey has not been straightforward.
Sure.
I come from like straightforward people.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So such different backgrounds.
Yeah.
Right, between us, and such different pathways. But because once I got on the math pathway, that's what I stayed with. I mean, it was a bit of an existential crisis for me, because I really didn't understand. Like, math to me was very rigid.
Yeah.
It was very rigid. It was very foreign. It was very not for people who look like me. Not my gender, not my ethnicity, right? Not my socioeconomic class. I was not smart enough to do math. That's the message that I had gotten from all my lifetime of experience.
Yeah.
And there was something in me more empathic, and I felt like my journey was to be more of a healer.
Yeah.
And I remember talking with someone about this, and she helped me to realize that I had a lot of trauma with math, and that and I was a tutor at the time, classified tutor with students with disabilities in DSPS, and they also had a lot of trauma with math, and that there was an intersection of the two, right, and that I could be a mathematical healer. And right, and that it didn't have to be the way that I experienced it, and that's what I've tried to carry forward with me. And then, right, so after completing my AA at City and transferring to State, I started in the math program there. But as undergraduates, you have to take a GE, upper division GE, in an area not your major.
Right.
So I took holistic healing. And I completed the courses in holistic healing,
Yeah.
which really helped, broaden my perspective and really helped reinforce that idea, right? That healing comes in very many ways, and
Yeah.
right, and it's not, it's not linear healing. So,
Right.
and then as a graduate student, I took additional courses in special education because so much of my working career had been with students with disabilities, and that's what I focused my thesis on was success strategies of students with disabilities in what we were calling in the early 2000s remedial math courses.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And then it shifted to basic skills and
Right.
I don't know what the latest nomenclature is for.
Right.
Right,
Right.
but
right. Well, support. Right.
support
we talk
courses.
about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Support courses today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't. You mentioned coming up against whiteness in your film studies, and it made me think that when I started off in Math Bridge, which was a program designed to support African American, Latino, and Native American students, underrepresented students in STEM, and the idea was to encourage students to go into STEM.
Yeah.
Right, science, technology, engineering, math, and so I was surrounded by beautiful Black and brown students, right, and I was very lucky the year that I entered the Math Bridge program because it actually lasted for 3 semesters, and then by the time I left, I was in transfer level algebra, and then after that trigonometry, and then I transferred to state, and I was in a math program, and my cohort was about 100 students. And the higher up in math I went, the fewer and fewer people I saw who looked like me.
Yeah.
The fewer and fewer people I saw who had a shared cultural experience, right? And, and that's why I really, in the beginning of my career, I only focused on the basic skills level math courses because I really wanted to encourage as many people as I could, right? Because the same is true in my teaching career. In the basic skills classes, I see all these beautiful Black and brown faces.
Right.
And when I'm teaching my college level or, calculus classes,
Right.
there are fewer and fewer of them. And I'm trying to reverse that funnel, turn it upside down so that we can or just to break the funnel altogether, actually.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so, right,
Yeah.
not everybody needs to become a math major, right? Certainly, but to appreciate mathematics and the beauty of that particular language, right, and that it's everywhere, and that if you want to, you can do it. Like if I can do it, you can do it, right? And it's after our conversation the other night, I was looking for some files on my computer, and I came across a poem I'd written. And so, because I remember when we first sat in my office, it feels like 100 years ago.
Right.
That when we were talking about running for union leadership.
Right. Yeah.
And we were sharing what we would bring to the union.
Yeah.
And I remember you saying you wanted to bring poetry.
Yeah.
And it it really just touched me. And it's been really beautiful to see how you have brought poetry to the union in so many ways, right? And I do talk about, I said I teach math as a language, and basic algebra or even arithmetic is the grammar, the structure. And as you move up, you get into your creative writing, and you get to something like trigonometry that just takes a wild left turn, and that to me can only be poetry.
That's
right?
fantastic.
It's just like if you're if you're going through the sequence, and you see the math, it seems very, there's a progression, and then this thing comes up, trigonometry, and it just takes this left turn. At least that was my experience.
Right.
And so in my mind, trig has always been poetry.
I really want to do trig with you now. So the last time I did trigonometry was junior year of high school. So because I was in those classes, but I remember that was the math that I really liked was trigonometry. It was the algebra 2 was kind of harsh and tedious, but trigonometry really spoke to me.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah. I wanted to, also, I had, as a graduate student, I had an opportunity to teach teach classes at San Francisco State. Yeah. And I've taught at Kenyatta College as a part-timer and Skyline, and those are wonderful institutions. And I have to say that it's City College students, like the students that come to City College, right? Even if we don't have like shared backgrounds, or they come from all over the world. They come from all corners of the city, and there's something about them, right, that I just absolutely love. It touches me, it touches my soul in a way. It's that what we do isn't work, and we work so hard. Like, nobody get the idea that we don't work hard, and we've been working harder than ever with the fighting for the school and with just transitioning to online and everything. But when you're in the classroom with those students, right, and sharing that experience, and you see that light, when they get something, and it's the best high in the world.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It is. It is. And I remember, actually, this was kind of, I was teaching my class last semester on Zoom, as we do.
Yeah.
At my parents' house, actually. And I was staying with them for a couple of months, and I had my computer up, and I was talking to my students. And I think my dad walked by the room, and he looked in and all that, and he was like, and like at the end of that day, my dad was like, "You are a really good teacher," and that made me so proud. I mean, right? My dad is a really good teacher. He was a professor before he worked in the pharmaceutical industry, and so. That was really that made me feel really good. Yeah. And I had actually while I was teaching that class, I was living with my parents, and I was like, I do a storytelling session when I teach literature. When I teach English 1B, writing about literature, I have us like come to class and tell stories to each other. Right. Because we need to know what a story is, and how stories are everywhere, and how we are storytelling beings. Yes. Right. And so I told them a story that my dad had told me like the day before that kind of related to the pandemic. It related to to his childhood, not his childhood, but his first year of college when there was political chaos. Right. And so so I told the story to my class, and they were like, "Wow, that's really great." And they told stories. And so it's just really, I mean, when we're in the classroom and we're in that community of our students, it's just beautiful. It's profound, right. And we all grow. I mean, I learned so much
every semester. I learn so much from my students, and being on Zoom, I feel like I've lost. I'm teaching with my eyes closed and my hands tied behind my back. Right. I feel like my sixth senses like have been shut off because I feel disconnected from my students in that way. So it's been a challenge, but we're limping through, and that's why I hold live classes, right? Still, even if it's over Zoom, but
no, me too.
But and then it's the experience we have with them, and then getting those emails, letting us know that they got accepted into their school, or that they landed the job that they were going for, and what they, hearing from them sometime later, and what they've done, and the appreciation, and just knowing that you've made a positive influence, and then think about all those hundreds, if not thousands, of students who've come through, right? And the tens of thousands of students who've come through City College, because we're just two individuals, right? And there's so many faculty that are doing such good things. Yes. at City
Yes.
College, and
Yeah.
to think about what is going to be lost if, right,
Right.
if these layoffs go through.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I wanted to bring us back to love and power. And so I teach this book in English 1A. It's Bell Hooks All About Love. You can get it here at Bird and Beckett.
Right.
And Bell Hooks says the will to power and the will to love cannot coexist. And I feel like, first of all, we as faculty and as a community are coming up against power, right?
Yes.
In this struggle, we're coming up against a system that wants to define and turn City College into something quantifiable, right? Into something that fits a particular mold, and also, you know, I mean, when I think about my own educational experience, you know, education has certainly been used, right, to have power over me, over, you know, my people, right?
Right.
In terms of not so much in terms of keeping us, you know, me as my, you know, my with my Indian scientist family out of education, but keeping us in our place.
Yes.
Right. And you know, and also forcing us into like a narrow pathway. Right. This is, you know, you got to do this. You can't waver. Right. Get your PhD by the time you're 26.
Sure.
And participate in the power structure that already exists.
Right.
Right. Rather than breaking it open. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for me, it was I felt that power structure kept me out, and people like me out.
Yeah.
I'm the first in my generation to graduate high school, and you know, and actually earn a high school diploma, and you know, let alone go to college and graduate.
Yeah.
And or grad school, you know,
Right.
and it's, you know, to see my my daughter and my nieces and nephew all you know attending college and graduating, and you know, it's just what a difference, right?
Right.
And not just City College, but other community colleges and the roles that they played
Right.
in their lives, right?
Right. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's and I think that you know, those influences at the state, right, that want us to be right, and want us we're not a business,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
We are not supposed to be turning a profit,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Our value is in our students and the in the experiences they gain, right?
Right,
And
right.
that can't be quantified
Right.
with you know, a dollar amount or a strict timeline.
Right.
You know,
Right.
if I had you know, I one of my mentors at City College said to me when I was in graduate school, and she had encouraged me in math. She said at one point, she said to me, you know, if I had known how long it was going to take you to finish, I would have never encouraged you to go to math. And when she said that, I was heartbroken. And then she explained a little further, and you know, that because, you know, then I would have been launched on my career sooner in life, because I didn't start as a full-time faculty member until I was in my 40s. You know, we struggled financially the whole time I was in school,
Right.
et cetera. And you know, she was trying to say something, right, that was she thought, well, those were her priorities.
Yes.
So those weren't mine.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes
And
sense.
so she was expressing her
Yeah.
priorities.
Yeah.
And to me, I mean, I certainly didn't get into
Yeah.
education to get rich. Right. And so, right. And
Yeah.
because that's part of the narrative that's
Right.
out there, is the City
Right.
College spends too much on its faculty. We're not getting rich, folks.
Oh no. Oh no.
Right. But, you know,
Yeah.
but we're making it work in
Right.
but for me, it's about that passion. It's about those experiences.
Right.
Yes, I'm grateful that I can afford my rent and and pay my bills, because this is not an easy
Right.
town to do it in, right?
Yeah.
But that wasn't my motivation for
Right.
going to school and finishing that
Yeah.
degree,
Yeah.
right? It was
Yeah.
about having a better life experience, for myself and my daughter, and
Yeah. Yeah.
and that can't be quantified with a dollar sign.
Absolutely. So it's a richer life experience, not in financial terms, but in cultural terms. And I mean, I'm thinking about, we have that sign at the entrance of City College, "The truth shall set you free," right?
Right.
And there's so many ways that it sets us free, and it sets us free in our own pathway to finding the truth, right?
Yeah.
So, and it's not. I mean, yeah, building a career is great, but there are so many ways that you get there, and so many ways that that your world just breaks open.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, and I took Chinese when I was working in the Chinese community. I decided I was going to take Chinese at City College, and so I did. I did that for 2 years, and that was great fun.
Yeah.
And we can do that. My mom went to community college after she retired and took painting classes, and then she said, "Well, I'm going to take art history," and then
Right.
and then she said, "Well, I'm going to take Spanish," because like at the time, like Omar, my son, was like going to Spanish immersion kindergarten.
Sure.
So and you can do that, and it keeps us thriving.
Absolutely. I took
Yeah.
some classes in women and gender studies.
Right.
And
Yeah.
and one of my classes for the last several years has
Yeah.
been a women and gender studies focused math course.
Yeah.
And that's and I was able to to take those classes and to broaden my own knowledge base, and it just guitar and
Right.
swimming and
Yeah. Yeah.
just
Yeah.
there's so much there. It's the lifelong learning
Yes.
is important.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Just
Yes.
because you have a
Yeah.
piece of paper
Right.
that says you've
Right.
like I don't understand this idea of completing your education. Like
Right.
you do that when you pass to the next world.
Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't
Yeah.
complete.
No.
No, education is not to be completed.
Right.
It-
Yeah. Yeah.
You
And
know.
it's not a hierarchy.
Right.
Right? I mean, we live in a society that structures it as a hierarchy.
Yes.
Like you finish you get your 4-year degree, you get your master's, you get your PhD, whatever. You take this pathway, this upward pathway. But there is so much. If you do that, you limit yourself.
Right.
Right?
Right.
If you don't open yourself to the opportunities that are everywhere, right? Whether they're, I mean, so like I said, when I graduated from Berkeley, I thought I was hot stuff. And I learned pretty quickly that I wasn't.
Right.
So, so that's, I mean, that's what City College has to offer us.
Yeah.
Is like this very rich and beautiful and multifaceted way of growing.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I did my GE. I transferred as a junior. Right. Went to state. Okay.
Yeah.
Everything took twice as long as
Right.
what the prescription was.
Right.
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 And then the master's program, it was on paper it looked very linear. It wasn't, right?
Right.
It took
Right.
Yeah.
And
but this idea, like my belief about myself and my ability to learn was that you're just really, you're too stupid, you're too dumb to that was the message that I had, that or that I was too lazy to learn, and that was the misdiagnosed learning disability, right? Right. But at City College, right, it was like those myths started to be dispelled,
Right.
and
Right.
I
Yeah.
started to be able to discover,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
and I I took over 100 units at City College in those first 4 years, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that wasn't lazy.
No,
Right.
absolutely
That-
not.
that
While,
wasn't-
while raising a kid,
Yeah.
that's like,
But it was that breadth of offerings,
Yeah.
right, that
Yeah.
allowed me to explore and
Right.
then find my path.
right.
And that's
right,
that's
right.
the thing, right? City College is a landing pad for people who are at a crossroads in life, right? And they have the opportunity to explore, find direction,
Yeah.
and then continue on their journey wherever that might lead them.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I think we're about wrapping up here. So so I want to just bring us back to the crisis that's happening at City College, and we're asking people to get involved.
Yes.
To go to AFT 2121 on our social media and hashtag IMCCSF. We have a month of action.
Yep.
Coming up.
Yep.
So yeah.
Including this Thursday, we're going to have night school right over
Yes.
here in front of Conlon Hall.
Yeah, socially distant, masked, you know.
Socially distant
yeah.
masks. We're going to
Yeah.
have a teach-in
Yeah.
talking
Yeah.
about the crisis and the City College and other ways to get involved. Contact the Board of Trustees. Let
Yes.
them know.
Yes.
Let them know.
Yeah,
that,
absolutely.
City College matters. City College
Yeah.
matters to you. City College matters to San Francisco.
Right.
Right.
Right. And then contact your city leaders, your
Yes.
supervisor,
Your
the mayor.
supervisors.
Let them know that, you know, we're asking the city to help us out.
Right.
City College is vital to the city of San Francisco.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And and we're not asking for a handout, a bailout. We give back to the city.
Yes.
We
Yeah.
we give back to the city, and I said early on that at the root of our problem is the chronic underfunding
Yeah.
of community colleges, and we deserve, San Francisco deserves a rich and vibrant community college, but we need to be funded in order for that to exist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. We need
Yeah.
this. Yeah. So thank you everybody for listening in, for joining us, and
Thank you.
and thank you Eric, and thank you Bird and Beckett for hosting us here and giving us the space to have this dialogue, this math and English dialogue.
This math and
Yeah.
English dialogue. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
All right.
We did it.
We